Hello, my name is Larry Red. Welcome to my channel, Larry Red Reads. This is not a joke, folks. This is me. This is my well, Larry Red's not my real name. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's a pseudonym. But anyways, it's a pseudonym that will suit me well, hopefully, on this book YouTube journey. I hear it's called BookTube. Okay, anyways, I read two books so far this year. I think they're really good, so I wanted to share them with you guys. I don't know, I enjoy reading. I know other people enjoy reading, so I thought, if I could share the books that I like with other people, that would be cool. So yeah, here we go. I read these two books. I'm going to keep them spoiler free. These are both pretty spoilable books. So without further ado, let's get into Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doer. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I don't really do much research for this, but anyways, this book is like really, really good. I usually don't cry when I read books, but when it comes to Anthony Doerr books, I'm two for two from the ones I've read where I've cried. The other being All the Light We Cannot See, which I believe won like the Pulitzer or something. Great book. Uh, but yeah, this one I think is even better, to be honest, or at least I liked it more. Without giving too much away, it's like one of those books. I feel like these are getting popular, where like there's three different stories, or like a bunch of different stories. In this case, three, across three different times, and they somehow relate. So the main idea of this book is that there's a ancient like Greek story like tale thing uh about this like guy who turns into a fish and like a donkey. It's like a weird story. It's not that important. Well, I mean, I guess it is. Maybe I missed that. I don't know. I'm not like a good reader. I'm like I enjoy reading, but like don't come to me for like analysis. Uh, but yeah, so anyways, there's like this ancient tale, and there's three main, in the actual narrative. It's kind of like a book within a book, but in the narrative that is the most interesting, there are three stories. So one takes place in like 1450s, in Constantinople. Now it's called Istanbul. But anyways, apparently there was like a siege. Like the Ottomans were like trying to take over the city of Constantinople in what was then the Byzantine Empire, something like that. And anyways, this the first of the three stories in this book follows sort of a boy named Omir, who is part of the Ottoman army, and he's sort of like disfigured. He has like a cleft lip or cheek or something, and it follows him, who's sieging the city, and then on the inside, there's a girl named Anna, who's like an orphan, and she lives in this like place where I don't know, they do like knitting or something. I don't really understand it. But anyways, yeah. She basically learns how to read, and that's where we, chronologically at least the book first shows up, where she is sort of keeping this ancient Greek story by Aethon, or not by Aethon, by Antonius Diogenes, but about a guy named Aethon alive. And then like 500 years later, you have this story in Idaho, where you have a library and a man called Zeno. And oh my God, he is such an amazing character. Zeno Ninus is his name. And, we start seeing him as like this 80-year-old, and we learn more and more about his life. And it's just such a sad but beautiful story of his life. But when we start the book, he's an 80-year-old, and he is putting on play. And the play, that this is how it connects, is based on this story about this guy Aethon, written by Antonius Diogenes all these years ago. So already you're sort of seeing the connections. Uh, and while Zeno is putting on this play at the library, there's like terrorist attack. And basically, this boy named Seymour, who we also learn about, and who's also an incredibly well written character, in my opinion, and just a super, super sad story to read about, but also so enriching and really enjoyable. I think reading about Seymour is really where, the waterworks came on. Uh, and his story of how he got to this point where he's basically, you know, trying to plant a bomb in this library. Uh, and you sort of understand why he's doing that, and it's really interesting. And then they never really say exactly how far in the future it is, but some hundreds of years after that, after the library, which takes place in present day, February 2020, right before the Great Pandemic. And speaking of well, actually, that's a split. But anyways, the third story is about this girl Constance who is on. She's like we start seeing her as like a 12-year-old girl, I think, something like that, and she lives on this ship. It's called I don't know, some fun name for a ship. Let's see, what's it called? Um, I mean, does it really matter what the ship is called? Yeah, it's called the Argos. It's called the ship, and basically we're sort of put in medias res on the Argos, which is a ship, spaceship that is flying to a new planet called Beta Oaf 2. I don't know if that's a real planet. Could have just made that up. Uh, Anthony could have. But anyways, they're flying to this planet, and because apparently like Earth got really bad because of like climate change and war and all that stuff. That's like probably gonna happen. And anyways, they're flying to this planet. And we sort of learn about Constance, and her dad is telling her this story of Aethon on the ship, and we see how that story relates to Constance's life. So that's the three basic plot lines that are sort of woven together in this book. And I mean, Anthony just does such an amazing job. I mean, this is like a let's see, like a 600-page book, but it goes by so quickly because I mean, it's the same sort of thing that he does in All the Light We Cannot See, where he has these quick chapters, and they zip around a lot. So it's a super fun, quick read. I mean, yeah, it's just really amazing. He did not disappoint. If you liked All the Light We Cannot See, you will love Cloud Cuckoo Land. And if you didn't read All the Light We Cannot See, or if you didn't like it, I still think you would love this book. The next book that I read is Parable of the Sower by the great Octavia Butler. So this is a book, speaking of, climate change and war and poverty and crime. This is a book about that, basically. It takes place in the year 2024, or that's when it starts, which is coming up. So, mark your calendars. But it takes place in like a suburb of LA in 2024. And basically, what is this? It starts in this sort of community, neighborhood, basically, of like 11 families, and they're in this neighborhood, and it's sort of like an enclave. They're in this walled neighborhood, and basically the only safe place that you can live at this time. Sorry, let me take a little sip of my cherry Coke from Jimmy John's. Anyways, what they call the outside, which is outside of their neighborhood walls, is incredibly dangerous. There's crime everywhere. People will steal from you, kill you, all these terrible things. So basically, the only place that's safe for our main character, Lauren, and her family and the rest of the families in the neighborhood is her little walled neighborhood. And there's always the threat, though, that, the walls will break down, that, the desperate poor and homeless will sort of break in, and it paints a really scary picture. And then obviously there are the effects of climate change. There's very little water. Water's more expensive than food. Things are going horribly for the country. They talk about like the president and the politics of this world, where basically the whole country's sort of collapsing. State borders are becoming like national borders. Like people are trying to flee to Oregon, but they can't get in, or can't legally get in. Um, and then there are all these interesting ideas, sort of relating to, what this sort of breakdown of American, the American system would look like. There's, in the book, it starts in 2024, so there's still presidential elections. And this guy, President Donner, he wins, excuse me, and his idea to sort of help the country. This is sort of a side point in the book, I feel like, but I feel like it gets a lot of attention now because, I don't know, his like slogan is to sort of make America great again. And this book was written in 1993, well before the election of some other guy who said that in real life. But anyways, yeah, uh, there's a lot of that nostalgia for like the good old days. Lauren is in a family uh, where her parents are college educated, which is a rare thing these days, and Lauren can read. She's very very smart. That's Lauren is an amazing character. The way she writes, you can sort of understand how she's like getting older, because the book takes place over like 3 or 4 years, and her it almost feels like her writing like gets better, and she sort of talks about that, how she's always having trouble expressing her ideas in writing, and that's something I definitely related to. Uh, with Lauren and Lamina, the main character. But anyways, like I said, the president is like, proposing ideas to deregulate everything. Like people are basically getting used as slave labor in company towns on the outside because it's so hard to get a job. So people are so desperate for anything that, they'll work in these like company towns and for next to nothing, getting paid in like company dollars, and basically creating a system of modern slavery, and all the you know issues of our own time like racism and inequality are just magnified in this sort of magnified times 100 in this America that takes place in the book. Getting to our main character, Lauren Olamina, her dad is like the neighborhood preacher, and the father is another character that is just super interesting, because Lauren remarks in the book, and you know you can definitely kind of see where she's coming from, that like her father is the best person she knows. Like he's an extremely strong man. He, is doing everything he can to make sure that his family is okay, that his community survives. He's a preacher. Lauren's stepmom, Corey, is also an interesting character. But I say stepmom because Lauren's birth mom died in childbirth, and that's a super important part of this book. Is Lauren's biological mother was addicted to drugs, and drugs play a really interesting role in this book. So primarily with Lauren, it plays the role of Lauren has this sort of uh, condition, I would say, like syndrome, called hyperempathy, which means that she can basically experience other people's pain and pleasure. And I mean this literally. Like, if someone gets hurt and she sees it, like she gets hurt. And that's obviously super problematic in this world that she lives in, where there's hurt and pain all around her. Like, she just talks about how when she was younger, even like her brothers, she has like four stepbrothers, would put red paint on their bodies, and it would make her actually literally bleed. And yeah, so this hyper empathy comes from her mother, uh, and this isn't spoilers, comes from her mother abusing a drug while she was pregnant with Lauren, and her mother dies during childbirth. And I think one part of this book that's like the scariest, at least that like caught me and like gave me the heebie-jeebies, because I'd read this before bed, is there's like in the outside, there's this drug in the book called pyro, and it's like a super scary idea. It gives me the creeps, where basically like people are taking this drug, and like it's called pyro because it makes you into like a pyromaniac. Like it makes you like love fire. Like they talk in the book how like you take this drug, and like seeing fire is like better than, you know, sex. I don't want to say it. It's PG channel, but yeah, this is not a PG book though. So uh yeah, it's a really scary idea, and like these guys and girls who take pyro, they like shave their heads and paint their faces and sort of watch the world burn. I don't know. There's probably a lot of symbolism in this book that I'm not smart enough to see and analyze. But the other big thing I guess I should talk about is that Lauren, despite her father being a preacher, has some interesting ideas about religion, and that's a big part of this book. You could see on the cover you have from the wonderful John Green, the quote, brilliant, endlessly rich, pairs well with 1984, The Handmaid's Tale. And John Green also talks about, I think, uh, in his review on the inside, he says, a fascinating exploration of how crises can fuel new religious and ideological movements. And that's a big part of this book. Lauren, throughout the book, has this religion that she's developing called Earthseed, which is, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically it comes down to like the idea that God is change. She has like these verses that she'll write before each chapter. I guess I could just read the first one. All you quote, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So she has these quotes that she at the beginning of the book is really nervous to talk to her father, because she has this very different view of religion and God than her father, who is a Christian minister, does. So that's a big part of the book, and how, in these terrible circumstances, new religious movements can can come out of the ashes. And there's a sequel to this book, which I feel like isn't talked about. I always hear about this book, and I never hear that there's a sequel. And I need to read the sequel. I was at Barnes and Noble, and like I bought this book, and I went back to go buy the sequel, nowhere to be found. So gonna have to probably order that on Amazon. The sequel's called Parable of the Talents, because this book definitely leaves off on a cliffhanger, and I would have been like, wow, that kind of sucks. But it turns out I'm the one who sucks because I didn't know that there's a sequel. But yeah, I guess in these like book review things, people rate the books. So, I'll do that. I'm not afraid to rate the books. I always feel weird rating the books because, like, if I was reviewing a book by any author that got published, like, they're infinitely better at writing than I would ever be. So, like, it's weird for me to criticize them. Now, luckily, in this case, these are both amazing books. But even like if they weren't, like, I'm never gonna give a book like 1 star. Like if you got published, like, good for you, man. You at least get 2 stars in my book. But these books get way more than 2 stars. Parable of the Sower. I'm gonna give this one 4.25 stars. 4.25. Put it in the database. Really amazing book. Super fast paced. It's pretty short. I read it in about a week. And I'm a pretty slow reader, all things considered. Really enjoyable. Highly recommend. And then Cloud Cuckoo Land. I'm gonna have to give this bad boy a 4.5. Really, really enjoyed it. If you make me cry, if a book makes me cry, very few books can do that. I'm a pretty tough guy. Uh, you get some more points in my book. So yeah, 4.5 for Cloud Cuckoo Land, but I mean that's not just honestly, Parable of the Sower could be 4.5 as well. They're both amazing books. Maybe this could be the thumbnail. Okay. Um, Thanks for watching. I'm Larry Red from Larry Red Reads. I'll see you on the next page. I guess that could be my outro. See you on the next page. See you later.